Once again, I would like to say hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Karina Ivanyan. I'm an intake advisor here at the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO at UC San Diego. ISPO is one of the 4 units in the Global Initiatives Department that also includes our International Faculty and Scholar Office, Study Abroad, and the Office of the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Global Initiatives. And today we will be talking about applying for your US visa. Before we get started, I just want to reiterate and say welcome, International Students and Programs Office, as well as the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs. Would like to congratulate you on your acceptance to UC San Diego. And we want to let you know that we're here to assist you throughout your stay in the United States. We're here to provide services that will enhance your quality of your experience, as well as contribute to your academic success at UC San Diego. As I mentioned before, my name is Karina Ivanyan. I'm an intake advisor at ISPO, and I'm joined by my colleagues today, so I'm going to pass it over to them to introduce themselves as well.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Gabby Hoffman. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Experience and Engagement here at the International Students and Programs Office alongside Karina. I'll go ahead and pass it along to my colleague, Mary.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mary. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions here at UC San Diego, and I'm excited to speak to you all a bit about, what you may be seeing and next steps as you navigate your acceptance here at UC San Diego. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Shauna.
Hello, everyone. It's so lovely to see you all here. My name is Shauna Slepiota, pronouns she and hers, and in my role, I coordinate new graduate student orientation within the GEPA office. So I can't wait to welcome you all to campus as we approach the new academic year, I should say.
Thank you all so much for those lovely introductions. A few housekeeping things before we dive deeper into our webinar today. You are in listen-only mode, which means you can hear us, but we can't hear you. And this is where the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen is super, super important, because this is going to be the main way we're going to accept questions today. So throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. In a case where we don't have enough time to answer all of the questions, please visit icontact.ucsd.edu to submit your questions and connect with one of ISPO's advisors. I also would like to let you know that we are recording today's webinar. You will be able to view this webinar recording at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. It usually takes us about 2 weeks to process and upload those, so we really appreciate your patience. But as soon as they're available, we will post them on this website. And then lastly, another little thing about the Q&A feature. So feel free to type in your questions there. You can submit them anonymously if you would like. And then one of our presenters today will either type a response back, or we'll do a Q&A session at the end. So our goal is to leave quite a lot of time to answer your questions at the end of this webinar. So we will be answering some of the questions live. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mary.
All right. So as I said, I'm Mary. I am the Director of Graduate Admissions, and I wanted to share a bit with you all just to emphasize, possible next steps that you may need to complete at this time. So if you have not done so already since reviewing your acceptance letter, I strongly encourage you to log into your application account at the link shown here. And to view your application portal. There is a lot of and also Shauna just put the link in the chat, so please copy that for your own use. There's a lot of important information in your applicant status portal. Not only will you see, your copy of your admission letter, you will see your decision reply form. So if you have not already responded and, to your offer of admission, we strongly encourage you to fill that out at your earliest convenience. Many programs have deadlines coming up, so it's also important to be in touch with your program to make sure that you're aware of any deadlines around your decision. And then also you'll see a number of other to-dos. You'll see, or you possibly may see, a statement of legal residence form as a to-do item. This form is not required by all programs, so if it's not listed, there is no action for you to take on this form. So just a quick note. So don't panic if you don't see it. That is purposeful. And then at this time, most students are provisionally admitted. So when you applied to UC San Diego, you were not required to submit official academic materials when we reviewed your application for admission. Now that you have been admitted, you will see in your applicant status portal a list of pending admission documents that are required in order to finalize your admission. As an international student, the majority of our international students have attended and earned degrees from institutions outside of the United States. If this is the case, you will see a document on your pending admissions section that says WES course by course evaluation. There are detailed instructions in your portal on how to procure a WES course by course evaluation. This is required for all applicants who have attended and earned degrees from institutions outside of the United States. It's important to note that you do not need to submit and have your admission finalized in order to begin your visa process. So again, in your portal, there are going to be detailed instructions of when these items need to be submitted by. We have a pretty generous deadline. The deadline for these materials is not until the 4th week of fall quarter. So you have time to submit these documents. But we encourage you to get started on these as soon as possible, as oftentimes it can take a while to collect the materials that are required for you for that WES evaluation or any other listed requirements in your portal. I also encourage you to contact grad admissions at ucsd.edu if you have questions regarding your pending documents. This is the best way to contact our office. We are experiencing a high volume of inquiries right now, so we appreciate your patience in advance. And then for the purpose of this presentation, I just wanted to note that we will not be answering like specific case-by-case questions of like, did you receive my materials? Or can you check on XYZ? We unfortunately do not have the bandwidth in this presentation to answer those specific questions, but we encourage you to email us. And then in the next slide, you'll just see a view of an example of what the admissions portal, the applicant status portal looks like. So again, yours will look a little different based on your requirements, but you'll see the forms checklist here. So in this screenshot, there's a check mark next to the decision reply form. So this individual, responded. There's also a green check mark next to their statement of legal residence. So they've already completed that. There will be a red X next to items that you have yet to complete. There's a pending admissions document section. So again, that will be specific to you and your requirements. And then this highlighted section down here is extremely important. The admitted students what to do immediately section and a number of other links that we strongly encourage you to take a look at. These pages have a lot of important information. There's information about housing. There's information about finalizing your admission, visa process, items that you could be thinking about doing before you arrive on campus and once you arrive on campus. So really encourage you to get familiar with your applicant status portal. It's not uncommon for applicants to sometimes, see that admission letter, they get excited, maybe they accept their admission, which is awesome, and then they don't go back to their portal and they end up missing a lot of really, really important information. So please go to that link shared in the chat. Make sure that you're up to date on all of your to-dos, and email gradadmissions@ucsd.edu with any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, for those important updates. Hi, everyone. I'm going to get started in just a moment here and go over some of the more detailed information that I know we are all waiting for, and that is applying for your US visa. Before I do a deep dive into the details, I do just want to provide you with information on our website that is going to be very beneficial for you in learning about the process of applying for your visa documents, various different pieces of information such as certain timelines, guidelines for what documents are required, as well as funding minimums that are needed to be shown to request your visa documents. All that information is on our site, ISPO's Getting Started website at inewstudent.ucsd.edu. This provides comprehensive first steps, kind of divvied up into a checklist so that it makes it kind of easy to see and what to do next in terms of requesting your visa documents. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So as Mary was discussing in her presentation, you can have pending documents in terms of your transcript review and so forth. That can all be pending. That doesn't stop you from applying for your visa documents through the International Students and Programs Office. What you do need to do is you will need to have accepted your admission to UC San Diego. You will have also needed to have set up your single sign-on, your student account, that is with your email address, in order to access the system that will provide you with your visa documents. Some of you have already done this, which is great. If you have not done this yet, once you have set up your student account, followed the instructions on doing so after you're accepting your admission to UC San Diego, you may begin the visa document request process by going to iportal.ucsd.edu. You can also access the iPortal by way of the iNew student site that I gave you the link for. I do recommend actually going to through the iNew student site because it gives you a little bit more contextual information before just launching right in. Some of your questions might be answered by going to that site first if you have any of those before starting your iPortal application. So the iPortal opened on March 1st. If you have your student login credentials, you should be able to get into that system and request your documents. Usually our turnaround time for processing visa documents is within 15 business days. You can also track the progress of your visa request in the iPortal yourself. So you'll see that there is a due date assigned to it. You will be receiving those documents on or before that due date. Any updates to your application will be provided there. If there are questions or problems with your application for your visa documents, an advisor will reach out to contact you. If you have not heard anything, that is, it is still pending, but your due date has not been reached yet, we encourage students please to not contact our office for information or updates just because the volume of requests will then keep us from being able to process your documents, if that makes sense. So please, we just ask that you look at that due date, know that it will be completed by that date. Unless there are questions, we will reach out to you. And then for students who are requesting the F1, and I'll go over this in a little bit more detail, they'll receive their I-20 electronically, and students requesting the J1, so receiving a DS 2019, will be receiving the DS 2019 for the J1 visa. Once you have received your document, you can apply for your visa appointment. So again, here's just a review. Sorry, you can go back to the next slide, Karina. Thank you. The iportal.ucsd.edu, again, this takes you right to single sign-on to get into your account. It will prompt you to upload a copy of your passport as well as financial support documents. For graduate students, more often than not, that tends to be a department support letter if you are funded by your department. Students who are in self-support programs will need to upload evidence of funding either from family source or from an approved loan, scholarship, whatever that might be. You can request, you can upload that information there. The minimum funding requirements for an I-20 or DS 2019, again, can be found at inewstudent.ucsd.edu. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, our students who will be applying for the F1, which is the majority of our students, will receive what's called a Form I-20. This document will be uploaded to your iPortal request electronically. It will have an electronic signature from an advisor in our office. I do want to stress that even though it is submitted to you electronically, in order for it to be considered valid for a visa appointment and for travel into the United States, you do need to still print the document, sign it yourself, and carry it with you for both your visa appointment and travel. The Customs and Border Protection at the border, as well as consular officials, will not take electronic copies shown on a computer or on your phone. So make sure you print that, sign it, and show it. For students who are coming in on the J1 visa, typically these are students who are 50% or more funded by a government entity in their home country, or are funded 50% or more by their department and choose to go for the J1 visa. Those students will receive a Form DS 2019. Now, the J1 program is under the jurisdiction of a different government entity, the Department of State versus the Department of Homeland Security. And the Department of State still has guidelines in place that says we must provide you a hard copy of this form. So you will not be receiving an electronic copy. This does need to be sent to you. And you need to also sign it and bring it with you. And there are shipping options available in the iPortal for you to indicate how you would like to receive this document. All right, so now with your visa documents in hand, it's time to book your visa appointment. Just a tip for any individuals who are citizens of Canada and Bermuda, these students are not required to apply for an F1 or J1 visa stamp. I just wanted to let individuals know that before we move further. We do have a fair number of students from Canada who inquire about this in particular. So once you have your visa documents from us, either the I-20 or DS 2019, you do not need to go to the embassy to apply for a visa stamp. You do still need to apply for, pay for applicable fees, such as the SEVIS fee and so forth, which I'll go over in a moment, but you do not need to apply for a visa stamp. You still need to present your valid Form I-20 or DS 2019 to enter the US. And again, you need to pay applicable fees, but you can find more information both on our website and also on the travel.state.gov website, which goes over the requirements for citizens of Canada and Bermuda. All right, so going into a little bit more depth on your visa documents, I'm going to take a look here and look at some of the different areas of the form to clarify what the different pieces mean. So as an international student, again, you must have your Form I-20 to apply for the F1 visa. That means booking your visa appointment, or a SEVIS Form DS 2019 to book that visa appointment. So there's unfortunately, you cannot book that appointment before you have your SEVIS ID in hand, which is circled here in the top left-hand corner for F1 students and the top right-hand corner for J1 students. This is a number that is generated automatically once your visa appointments, your visa documents have been produced. We can provide that to students sometimes via email if there is an urgency in booking a visa appointment. However, students typically do need to just wait until they receive that document to book their visa appointment. So this number, the SEVIS ID that starts with the N, is unique to you. This helps identify you accurately to the Department of Homeland Security, Student Exchange Visitor Program within the SEVIS system. J1 students also need to have what is called the J1 program number. You can see circled here in the top right-hand corner of the DS 2019. So this is, again, located on your form needed to book your visa appointment. This will enable you to go through the portal through the US Embassy to secure that appointment. Now, some information on using a previous F1 or J1 visa stamp. We know some students, particularly those who are pursuing graduate study, have either had a visa in the US before or had it from a previous institution doing their undergrad degree or another grad program. And I wanted to go through some pretty typical scenarios we see from students when we're asking about using a previous F1 or J1 visa stamp. So we've categorized them here and basically anything from you cannot use a previous stamp to what you can use. I'll start with the top here. So some students we will have ask us they've received a brand new I-20 or DS 2019 from UC San Diego, right? You've accepted admission here, you've gotten documents from us. However, perhaps that student also already has a valid F1 or J1 visa stamp in their passport from a past visa appointment that they used with a different school's I-20 or DS 2019. This happens sometimes when students are deciding between graduate programs. Maybe they accepted admission at another school thinking they were going to go there, use those documents to apply for a visa, but then never used that visa to enter the United States. Then decided at a later point, I actually want to go to UC San Diego, received UC San Diego visa documents and asked, can I just use my visa stamp that I got from the other issuance? The answer, unfortunately, is no. If you have not activated that other visa stamp from your other record to enter the United States, you cannot use this visa. You do need to apply for a new visa with your UC San Diego I-20 or DS 2019. The other scenario we typically see is from students who have a brand new I-20 or DS 2019 from UC San Diego. They have a valid F1 or J1 visa stamp, though, from their previous school. Again, maybe another grad program here, another undergrad program. You might be able to use this visa if it is still valid into the future. We always encourage you check with your local US consulate first to verify. But even if the CVIS IDs do not match, sometimes you can still use that visa to enter the United States, but always check with your consulate. And then the last scenario that's more straightforward is students who are in another program here in the United States and they are transferring their visa documents to UC San Diego. They have an old visa that in their passport that is still valid. The CVIS ID from their previous school will match what is going to be on their UC San Diego's CVIS record, their I-20 or DS 2019, because you were simply transferring your record to us. In that case, yes, if it's valid, you can definitely use that visa stamp. In some cases, again, even if it doesn't match, that's okay. But usually the CVIS IDs will match and that will be totally fine for you to use. So now getting into the logistics of making your visa appointment. Some of you have already done this, taken a look at the usembassy.gov site to figure out where your local embassy is. You can see here by typing in this address and sorting by country, you can see where your local US embassy is in your home country. And that is where you are going to find information on exactly how to book your visa appointment and what steps to go through. I will say there is not a 100% standard process for booking visa appointments at every embassy across the world. It is slightly variable depending on which consulate you go to. Some embassies and consulates will outsource their appointment making capabilities to third parties. So sometimes you will go through a third party website to get to your visa appointment, but always, always make sure you go straight to the usembassy.gov site, make sure that is legitimate. Go through that booking system and through those steps to make sure that you are getting your visa appointment booked as soon as possible. And just a quick side note on the booking timeline. I know for students, it is, of course, a matter of planning and sometimes concern, especially in the last few years, about visa appointment availability. We are tracking visa appointment availability where things currently are. We rely on a tracking system from data that is used from the State Department. And I can say that currently 56%, almost 57% of embassies across the world can offer a visa interview to students within 2 weeks. That's for an F1 or J1 visa. And then about 71% right now of embassies can offer a visa interview within 1 month. That's 30 days. So that's actually quite good. Certainly it's much, much better than it had been during the pandemic, but things are really starting to come online again. And embassies are working very hard to accommodate students looking to book their F1 and J1 visa appointments. Okay, next slide. All right, so once you've gone to the U.S. Embassy site where you'll be booking your visa appointment, make sure you have your passport with you. You have your Form I-20 or your DS 2019 with you as well. You will need to print confirmation screen and bring to your visa appointment your Form DS-160. So the DS-160 is the form through which you pay for your visa appointment. It's called the visa fee. It's an MRV fee. It is $160. Again, make sure to check your embassy's website for payment instructions. They can vary from embassy to embassy. For more information, go to travel.state.gov and just search DS-160 for more info. Another fee that is required by all students, and this does include our students from Canada and Bermuda, is your SEVIS fee. So this is a fee that is associated with your visa document, your I-20 or DS 2019, that all F1 and J1 students need to pay. It's required for all first-time visa applicants. So just know if you're renewing your visa in the future, the same visa, you don't have to pay this again. This is just for first-time visa applicants. For F1 students, this fee is $350. For J1 students, this is $220. Make sure you pay this fee at least 3 business days prior to your visa appointment. You are going to want to have a receipt of that with you to show at your visa appointment. We have a SEVIS fee payment tutorial on our inewstudent.ucsd.edu website, but essentially you will be going to fmjfee.com to pay that SEVIS fee. Usually consulates and embassies will link to this site as well as part of your checklist of payments before your visa appointment. Make sure you pay that. We sometimes have students who do not pay the fee. They are able to get their visa, but then once they get to the United States, we are not able to register your record, and that can put your status in jeopardy. So without that fee paid, we are not able to take action on your record or register you once you get here. It blocks us from doing so. So make sure you pay that before you come to the United States. All right, so now preparing for the actual visa interview. Let's get into those steps. So again, what to bring to your visa appointment. Make sure you have your passport with you. That passport does need to be valid at least 6 months after your date of intended entry into the United States. So make sure that is valid. If you know that your passport is expiring soon or within those first 6 months after you intend to enter the United States, start the renewal process now. Even if you are applying to us for your visa documents with an old passport or a passport that's going to expire soon, and you're in the process of applying for a new passport, that's okay. We can still issue your visa documents. It does not impact your visa documents. We don't log your passport information on your I-20 in terms of the passport number and so forth. So please just go ahead and apply now. But if it is going to expire, make sure that you're starting that renewal process now. When you go to your visa appointment, you also, again, need your original Form I-20 or DS 2019, no electronic copies. Bring evidence of financial support, typically whatever support you uploaded to the iPortal to show us how much funding you have available to support your studies. You need your Form DS-160 receipt, your payment receipt, receipt of SEVIS I-901 fee that we just talked about. And then what's important here is documentation of a home country address. So something that shows ties to your home country. That can be a utility bill. It can be something that shows that your family owns property or, a rental agreement. Really what it is, the consular officer is wanting to see that you have ties to your home country and that you have reason to come back to your home country after your program ends in the United States. They want to make sure our students who are coming on a non immigrant visa do not have immigrant intent. That's really what they're looking for. So make sure you bring that with you. You might not even be asked for it, but in the event that you are, make sure you have that with you. So the interview itself, what's really surprising for our students typically is not knowing that the interview itself is actually very quick, usually less than 10 minutes long. So it's important for you in the interview itself as well, when you are asked questions by the consular official, to be brief, answer only the questions that you are asked, maintain a positive attitude, talk about your program of study and its connection to your long-term career goals. They want to see that connection if asked. Be prepared to have the interview conducted in English, and again, demonstrate ties to your home country. Those are sort of the 4 main takeaways, main pieces we would advise students to be aware of at your visa interview. All right, so now getting into visa delays, this does happen, so I do want to touch upon this a little bit. For some students, they will experience what is called administrative processing. Some of you might be familiar with this if you've had friends go through this before or might have experienced it yourself. So administrative processing is a special security clearance. It's a procedure that can last up to 60 days typically. We have seen it last longer in the past. Typically what will happen at the end of your visa appointment, the consular official will either tell you verbally or provide you with documentation, and they really should be providing you with documentation, but they don't always do, with a letter that's called 221G, indicating that your visa is on hold. This doesn't mean your visa has been rejected. This just means that your visa application needs to go through additional security checks at the US State Department level. So to be clear, these checks are not even done at the local consulate where you went for your visa appointment. These are done at a different level. And so typically the consulate is not able to offer updates on your case immediately because they themselves are not given information on where it is. That's closely sort of guarded information that is held by the State Department. So it can be understandably very frustrating because you don't have a lot of information. The consulate isn't able to share information. So it can be this waiting game, but do know that you have our support in this process. We have supported students in the process before, and I'll go over those resources here. So again, do know that ISPO, we are your first point of contact. If you have received one of these letters, do know that we can issue you support letters for you to provide to the embassy consulate to advocate on your case if your case has been undergoing delays of 60 days or more. And I say 60 days because this is what the consulate will always tell us, will always tell our students, that they usually don't have any updates to share unless it's been a minimum of 60 days. Then they can start asking Department of State for updates. So if it's come to that point, please reach out to us. We can provide a letter to help advocate. We can also help liaise with your department on next steps. If there are any delays preventing you from coming on time, we can work with those individuals to work out a plan for you. The department as well. Sometimes students will receive requests from the consulate to provide additional information for their visa interview. Sometimes students are asked for their advisor or their PI's resume to look at, their research interests and publications. Sometimes they're just asked for a detailed study plan. This is information that your department can help provide. And we can, again, work with your departments on helping get this documentation to you. So again, if you are placed in administrative processing, you have questions, please contact us at inewstudent@ucsd.edu. We can advise on next steps, including providing this support for you.
Thank you, Gabi. Before we transition into our live Q&A section, we just want to quickly tell you and share a few opportunities that can help you get engaged and get involved on campus. First, we wanted to highlight some of ISPO's signature programs, also known as I programs. For the sake of time, I won't go into all of them, but if you're curious to read some of the descriptions and learn more about these, please go to iprograms.ucsd.edu. So if you would like to talk about our English in Action, which is our conversation program, it is great for intercultural communication and cultural exchange. We pair participants with native speakers, and then you get to meet a few times with a volunteer to practice your English. This is free to our students, but additional fees may apply to scholars and spouses. Coffee Hour is one of our most popular programs. This is an opportunity for students to get together with one another, but also connect with ISPO team over some coffee and pastries. We usually have raffles and different games for these events as well. So it's a really fun opportunity to kind of be together in community. Trident Truckers is our partnership with UC San Diego Recreation. And this is where we take students on different trips to explore greater San Diego area. There's usually a fee associated with it, and students get to go kayaking or hiking, snorkeling. It's a great opportunity to kind of be in nature and meet other students as well. Our International Student Advisory Council, also known as ISAC, is composed of international graduate and undergraduate students, as well as cultural organizations. We get together once a month to talk about concerns that international students may experience. And then we work closely with ISPO leadership and other campus partners to make change, to bring change to campus community. And then last one I want to highlight is Community, which is one of our newer programs. And this is a space for students to discuss culture and identity. And usually we partner with different campus departments and centers such as Cross-Cultural Center or Counseling and Psychological Services as well. Another great way to stay in touch with the community is through our iEvents calendar, which can be found on ievents.ucsd.edu. So as you can see, there's a few of our signature programs like Community and Trident Trackers, but this is also where our campus partners can submit events. Usually it's something that has a global focus, but those can be just another way to explore your interest and get involved on campus. We're also active on social media, especially Instagram. So you can follow us at ispo.ucsd. And this is where we'll post announcements, registration links, and different resources for our students as well. A few additional resources that I wanted to highlight. One of them is our Return to Learn website, which can be found on returntolearn.ucsd.edu. So if you're interested in sort of learning more about COVID-19 updates and how they're impacting campus policies, please visit returntolearn.ucsd.edu. We also have a few important deadlines and reminders coming up. So as Gabi mentioned, as of now, you can start requesting your documents via iPortal by going to iportal.ucsd.edu. Now is also a good time to start applying for on-campus housing with hdh.ucsd.edu. So this is our main website for housing, dining, and hospitality. Next week on Tuesday, we're going to have another pre-arrival webinar that will focus on student health. And we'll talk about insurance and immunization requirements. So please register at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. Summer of 2023 is when you want to make sure you have met all of your student insurance and immunization requirements. And in September, we're not going to spoil anything today, but we're going to have our new international student orientation. And if you're curious to kind of learn more about what it may look like, please go to iorientation.ucsd.edu. And then this is just a list of upcoming webinars. Again, they can be found on inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. And they're a great opportunity to learn more about topics such as housing, funding, finances, and much more. And with that, we're going to open it up to your questions. So thank you so much for submitting your questions in the Q&A feature. If you haven't had a chance to submit your questions, please don't hesitate to do so. And I'm going to open it up to all of our presenters to address some of them.
Thank you, Karina. There's a question that came up towards the beginning that I wanted to address because I think could be other folks that have the same question. And it's about setting up your student account. And we do have instructions for this on the admitted students portion of our website. But again, as long as we have this group together, I thought it would be really helpful to just talk about it. One thing to keep in mind is you want to wait at least 72 hours after accepting admission to try to complete this step, because you need to allow time for the systems to talk to each other and connect. So with that in mind, there is a link, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat. And that's where you would go to set up your password for your personal identification number, also called PID. We use that term a lot. It's a personal identifier for you as a student on our campus. And it's going to allow you access to register and various financial systems, as well as trying to activate your UCSD email. And I'm also going to put a link as well to set up your this is information on how to set up your UCSD email address. I know the link is a little bit scary. If you just follow the link, then it should help you out and get your questions answered. But these are two pretty important first steps. So I wanted to make sure that everybody has that information. Thank you.
Thanks, Shauna. There are a few visa-related questions I was hoping I can also address that have come up, some common ones. There have been a few questions about updates to the I-20 once a visa appointment is booked. So there's some questions, concerns. What if, I've received my I-20 document and I booked my appointment, but then my funding source changes, or, there's some other kind of update on the I-20 form. That's okay. If that update occurs, you don't need to book a new appointment. You don't need to go through the whole process again. Just make sure when you do go to that visa appointment, you have your most up-to-date, your most current I-20 with you, but that does not impact your visa appointment at all. So no worries about that. And we do have a question too, and I know this is so important because we have students considering multiple admissions offers, so I want to make sure I address it. So a student asks, would I have the same SEVIS ID if I get an I-20 from multiple universities? So, let's say you accept 2 or 3 offers. Let's just say all of those universities issue you an I-20 after you've requested it. If that is the case, there will be different SEVIS IDs for every institution. So it's not the same SEVIS ID that's issued. Every time a university issues an I-20, a new SEVIS ID is automatically generated. So it's really important, once you're ready to go for that visa appointment, of course, that which university you are committing to, and you have that university's I-20 in your hands for your visa. So your stamp matches it. And just a related question too, will a SEVIS ID change if any information is updated on the I-20 document? No, your SEVIS ID, once it's issued to you, and if you're just updating, biographical information or program information, financial information, that SEVIS ID remains with you. It remains the same. None of that information will change. There's a good question here I want to address live as well, because it does come up, again, particularly for graduate students, because some graduate students will have the choice, and that is the difference between F1 visas and J1 visas. So I'm actually going to put the link describing the difference between the two in the chat for folks to take a look at. For all intents and purposes, and this is a very simplified kind of review of it, but so I encourage you to look through the differences here. If a student is funded 50% or more by their department or by an outside entity, typically a government, home government source, they have the option to apply for the J1 visa, the exchange visitor visa. The difference between the F1 and J1, again, is outlined on the chart, but it really does depend on the student. It's very student specific in making that choice between the two. One of the biggest differences, and which really helps our students make that decision, is if you are bringing family members, that is a spouse or a child, to the United States, and you want that spouse to be able to work in the United States during your studies, J1, if you're coming on the J1 visa, those dependents who come with you can work. They have work authorization that they can apply for while they're here. If you come in on the F1 visa, F2, so the dependent visa for the F1, they are not permitted to work. And so that can put a pause on spouses' plans who come to the United States for that time that you're here. So again, that's usually the biggest determinant for students who are considering the F1 versus the J1, but I encourage you to look at the chart that I just put in chat as well. There was some concern, and I understand we have our students from India are concerned that visa appointments are very late or just not listed at all right now as available. Our current sources that were just updated yesterday afternoon do say that Indian embassies are showing typically a wait time of 52 or 53 days right now for a visa appointment. Based on last year's experience, a lot of our embassies in India opened up large swaths of appointments kind of in chunks throughout the spring and summer. So what we can say is just keep checking the website, make sure once they open up these slots of appointments, obviously just book as quickly as you can. But we have gotten assurances, and I think the US Embassy in India posted a few days ago that their goal is to process 1 million visa applications this year alone. So they are on track, and they are very aware that our F1 students and J1 students too need those visas urgently and are working very hard to make sure that those are available to you. There's a question about what if a visa appointment, if a student is not able to secure a visa appointment, or if the visa gets rejected. We encourage you to stay in close contact with us at inewstudents@ucsd.edu, as well as your department, to keep them apprised of the situation. If you're struggling to get a visa appointment at all, or if it is rejected and it leads to delays in your start date of your program, please keep us up to date. We can work with the departments to try to figure out what might be possible for you at that given time. So do know that we are here as a resource. This is a good question I wanted to address. Someone's asking, they received a B1, B2 visa. So that's a tourist or visitor visa in the past, and it expired. Will that individual be able to waive the need for an F1 visa interview if they have had an approved US visa before, even if it's not the same type? We encourage you to check with your US embassy or consulate on interview requirements. Not because this would exempt you from it necessarily, but because different embassies are handling interviews and interview waivers differently. So it typically is not a reason, the reason that you provided here, to be a waiver for the F1 visa interview. It's a totally different visa type. Typically, they will want to see you for an interview for an F1 or J1 visa. But we do know US embassies have changed their protocols for interviews and visa waivers. So please check in with your consulate or embassy to make sure whether or not you will need one.
There is a question also about how to reach ISPO if any other questions come up. And so if anything comes up after this webinar, you can go to icontact.ucsd.edu and I'll post it in the chat as well. And we have a few options. You can either get in touch with us via email. You can also visit us in virtual advising, but all of those options will be outlined on icontact.ucsd.edu page.
And there's a question here as well as, can you briefly share how's the visa process for family members accompanying a graduate student? So for spouse, for children, typically, so when you go to apply for your visa documents, first and foremost, through our application, we will ask, are you planning to bring any family members with you? And by dependent, we want to be clear, the visa regulations state this can only be a spouse or a child. It can't be a parent or a cousin or anything. It has to be immediate family members like a spouse or a child. If that is the case, then we will ask for, of course, passport information, additional financial information as well to show that you as the principal F1 or J1 holder will be able to support that family member while they're here as well. And we will be able to issue visa documents through the iPortal. You can access those documents as well. In terms of applying for the visa, it can happen one of two ways. So sometimes we know plans change or are variable. So sometimes a student initially might not plan to bring their family members over immediately when they start their studies. Perhaps they want them to come a few months later. That is totally fine. It can happen one of two ways. You can all go together for your visa appointment, get your visa stamps together, or your family members can wait and apply for their visas separately from you, and then enter the United States separately from you as well. They don't need to travel with you to enter the US. Same goes for, even if you're waiting even longer, let's say, and you want to add your family members to your record, you don't have to apply immediately for their visa documents. You can apply at a later time. And again, they can apply for their visa at a later time as well, following the same steps that we went through in terms of booking the visa appointment. You do only need to pay the visa, the I-901 fee once for your record. That covers all of your records. So you don't need to pay that again for family members who are applying for their visa.
So there's a question that I sort of marked because it has to do with accepting admission and potentially deferring at a later date. And I think this touches upon work done by both of our offices. But Mary, I was hoping that you could maybe speak a little bit on how somebody might indicate a deferral.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shauna. So the answer to this question is typically yes. So essentially when a student wishes to defer, there are a few things to keep in mind. So if you initially said yes, and then you're experiencing some visa issues, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't think I'm going to be able to start by my anticipated start date of fall or something like that, you would want to immediately be in touch with your program. So you would want to connect with your program and let them know, like give them an update that, you don't think that you're going to be able to come for, we'll say, fall 23, and would they support a deferral? Because essentially you need your department's support in order to move forward with the deferral. At that point, then the department gets in touch with my team and we update your application. We update your information on the back end in our student information system to the term that you and your department have decided on. So sometimes, depending on what's going on, it can be up to a maximum of 1 academic year for a department to approve. It cannot be longer than that unless there are extreme extenuating circumstances. But sometimes in cases like this, it's, a student asking, like, can I defer 1 quarter? And then we would make sure that we made that update. And so that's the process on the admission side. I will pass it over to my ISPO colleagues to see, if you would need to be in touch with their office to communicate this change as well.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Yeah, for any deferrals, that there's obviously working in close concert with your department is of utmost importance. But if there are any changes that are made, we need to know for your visa documents. So we might need to adjust those. We want to make sure they don't lapse. So make sure that you're in touch with us as well, so we can make any adjustments necessary. There was a question here on financial support and what to show at the visa interview versus what is shown in the iPortal for initial issuance of documents. Whether any changes or variants in the document shown is okay. So let's say you show document ABC for your visa documents to be produced for you, but then, things are updated and you show, different types of documents for your visa appointment. That's okay. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Just for ease, we just let students know, try to gather the same documents. But if it changes, if you have updates, as long as you are showing the minimum amount needed that is listed on your I-20, that is totally fine to show at the visa appointment. Looks like some folks are asking about passport expiration. So if they know that their passport is expiring soon, like within the next year or so, asking, should I renew it now, or can I apply once I am in San Diego? We know from experience with students who have applied for passport renewals once they are stateside in the US, it can take a little bit longer. It can be a little bit trickier. So if it's feasible that you will get your renewed passport before you leave to start your studies here, we would recommend renewing it before you depart your home country. I'm trying to get through a few more. I know we are getting close to time here, about a minute left, so we might answer maybe, I don't know if any of my colleagues have seen questions that we want to answer. Just get those final questions in if you have any. And then, of course, please contact us by the information that my colleague Karina has posted, so we can help answer more detailed questions. There is one question I do want to address because this comes up somewhat frequently for students, asking if they can apply for their F1 or J1 visa in outside the United States, but not in their home country. So they're living in a third country, let's say, for the time being. Asking, do I have to return to my home country to process my visa, or can I apply in the third country? The simple answer is you can apply in the third country, but do know that it might take a little bit longer to get your visa, because if any checks need to be made on your application and so forth, that embassy, that consulate needs to liaise with your home country's US embassy or consulate for information before they can issue the visa. They might also want you to process in your home country because you show home ties there. You show ties to that home country. So make sure that just factor those pieces in as well if you are considering applying in a third country.
And looks like we are at time. So thank you, Gabby, for addressing that last question. We want to thank you all for joining us today to talk a little bit about applying for your US visa. As mentioned before, and also as you can see on the screen, if you have any follow-up questions for the International Students and Programs Office or for the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, please feel free to reach out to the email addresses you see on the screen. So for ISPO, it would be inewstudent@ucsd.edu. And for Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, it would be gradadmissions@ucsd.edu. Also, as we mentioned before, the recording for this webinar will be available in the next 10 business days or so on our inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu website. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. Have a good one.